What's going on, guys? My name is Nick and I'm just starting to build out my channel this year. I've done a few videos here in the past, but this is gonna be my first one of 2022 and really kind of the start of a new hobby, if you will. And so my wife and I will both be reviewing not only books, but TV shows and then movies that we just really enjoy and like talking to other people about. So the first review that I'm going to do of the year is actually the first book that I finished of the year as well, and that is Jade City. Now, what I'm going to be doing over the coming weeks is quite a few Stephen King reviews. That is my personal favorite author. He's really the one that got me into constant reading, if you will, and I'm honestly not even a huge fantasy guy. This was a kind of a stab at it, if you will, for me. It's not generally what I read. I'm more of a horror, suspense, thriller, true crime kind of guy, if you will. But I kept hearing a lot of hype about Jade City. A lot of the people that I follow online reviewed this, and it just had really a positive reputation, and the fact that it was urban kind of turned me on a little bit more as well. Not as into, you know, the Dungeon and Dragons sort of stuff. I know that's really popular. My wife's super into it, so you'll get some of that on the channel from her. But for me, it never really intrigued me that much. So the fact that this was in kind of a modern setting is really what spoke to me and made me want to, you know, give it a shot. Daniel Green, I listened to his channel quite a bit, and he just raved about this book and likes a lot of the similar stuff that I do, at least in the horror genre. So that's kind of what turned me onto it. But in any case, what we'll start with is kind of just a brief synopsis of what it's about. No spoilers either. If you even read the back, you'll get an idea of everything that I'm going over right now. But this is a modern day fantasy with, I would say, kind of limited elements of magic to begin with. It takes place in a fantasy world and really on an island. It's called Kikon, with the Kikonese people. And like I was saying, there's a few elements of magic, but it's really not completely driven by that. What the story is really about is clan warfare. And if you knew any research at all into the book or the author or anything like that, and kind of what Fonda was aiming for, was more of a kind of like a Godfather themed gangster kind of fantasy. And so that obviously spoke to me just because I enjoyed those movies. I like the Kung Fu movies as well. I'm interested in martial arts. I do jiu-jitsu myself. And so all of that kind of together piqued my interest in the story. And so didn't have a whole lot of expectation, even though there was a lot of hype about it, but went into it, you know, knew a few things about it, but semi-blind, and just kind of wanted to enjoy it and see if it was, you know, for me. But what I will say is this was a very immersive reading experience for me. The world building that Fonda did in this book, I thought was phenomenal. It was really, really easy to forget you're even reading when I went through this book. It's not loaded with characters either, to the point where, you know, you're following 20 different people. You know, I finished The Stand by Stephen King right before I read this, and coming from a book like that directly into this, it was amateur in comparison as far as just what you have to kind of memorize and hang on to throughout the book. The fact that she puts, and a lot of other fantasy books do this, I guess that's kind of just par for course, but, you know, the island itself, the city of Janloon, and then I'm on Jade War right now, and they actually put a little bit more in there, the world, and not just that island and city, but gives you a really good reference point for kind of the elements that you're reading about. And that she also lists the clans and their description. And so again, for me, I'm not a huge fantasy guy, so I'm not really used to having that kind of stuff in the book. I know that's, again, par for course, but I like that a lot. And what we do is we follow the clan, two different clans really, but the No Peak clan is really your antagonist, or your protagonist, excuse me, and the Mountain clan is your antagonist. And so these are two different families on the island of Kikon that are essentially battling with each other for ownership of the city in a sense, and everything that comes with it. And so territories, money, but the main thing is Jade. And Jade is your element of magic, if you will. What it is essentially a mineral, stone that gives anybody who wears it enhanced abilities. Now, the cool thing about Jade is it's not for everybody. It's essentially for the chosen bloodline. And if you're not part of that bloodline, not to spoil too much in the book, but you're either hypersensitive to it or you don't get anything out of it at all, any kind of effect. So again, it's limited on who can even use it to begin with. But because of the enhancements that you get from it, of course, people that are not of that bloodline to be using it want it, like a drug. It gives them power. It gives them really more power at the end of the day. But the book takes place again on the island of Kikon. Janloon is really the main city and where the two different clans live. And it's really a story about two different families and how they really are fighting over, again, power of the city. And something that I really liked about the book, you follow, I would say, 3 to 5 characters in Jade City. So nothing too extensive. But the 3 main characters that you follow are phenomenally written. There is depth to their characters. They each have their own, personality, what drives them, what they like, what they dislike. And so their actions become a bit more predictable to the reader as you get to know them, of course. And what I liked about Fonda Lee in this story is, there was some things, especially in Jade War that I'm reading right now, that became predictable to me. And I don't think that they were necessarily bad, though. It was one of those books where I kind of, 20 pages before it happened, I had an idea of what was going to happen. Jade City didn't give me that much of a feel for that. Jade War, it's happening right now. But again, I don't think it takes anything away from the story. Everything that happens that you might be able to predict is right in line with kind of what should happen given the events that led up to it. And so it felt earned to me. It didn't feel like anything was forced or, she kind of just threw that in there to spice up the book or anything. And so, yeah, I guess if I was going to gripe about anything, I wouldn't even call that a gripe. But sticking with Jade City, though, this book, like I said, was extremely easy for me to get into, get immersed in. And I'm not a fantasy guy. And so it's certainly not a YA novel, but if you know Fonda Lee or any of the other works that she's put out, she's written YA. And to me, this book kind of felt like it read like a YA novel. And what I mean by that is just it was easy to digest. The reason to me why it's not YA is because of the explicit content in it, explicit language, descriptions and themes, sex, power and just violence and stuff like that. But that's also why the book is so immersive to me. And so I'm not a YA guy. I'm my favorite author, Stephen King. I'm there for the explicit content. And so not, really for the faint of heart, I would say, but nothing too bad in this book where I think it's going to hurt anybody's feelings, like a lot of, the Stephen King stuff that I read. So I wouldn't say there's really trigger warnings in here. Even the language is, limited. There's explicit language, but it's not every other page or anything like that. There is violence and it's savage. But for people that read fantasy, I'm sure they're used to that anyways. But in any case, I really liked the urban setting that this took place in. To me, and I know not a lot of fantasy people are crazy into that. They kind of like that European style a bit more, it seems like anyways. Again, I'm not, embedded in that particular culture, if you will, of fantasy readers. It's just, I dip my toe in it here and there, but it's like kind of like a niche following that I haven't really broken into very much. And it's just because there hasn't been very many titles that I'm not interested in reading that are in there. But Jade City, I couldn't put this one down. I finished it in probably 3 days or so. And it was just excellent pace too. That book, I've heard other reviews where people didn't think that there was a good pacing in this book. And again, coming from reading something like The Stand or It, 11/22/63, some of the bigger books that Stephen King writes, I never felt like those were bloated, but this book had a really high pace to me. The chapters are pretty short, so it's easy to digest, but things are happening every single chapter. There's not really any fillers. And even in chapters where there needs to be fillers and kind of description on what's going on behind the scenes, political stuff, that's not going to be like action driven, it's all necessary. It needs to be in there, and it builds more depth to not only the characters but the situations that they're in. So it's a necessity, and it's also really entertaining. So I didn't feel like there was any kind of drag in this book at all. I thought it was a pretty high octane book from start to finish. So a few of the characters in there that you'll get to know is Hilo, Lon, Shay. Now, these are part of the No Peak clan, and the way that the clans are set up, a lot like, again, a mafia. You got your pillar, who is essentially the leader of the entire clan. You've got the horn, and that is the leader of the clan's army. And then you also have the weatherman, who is really responsible for the political activities, business ventures, and all things not really war or, again, army related, anything like that. And so they take care of a lot of the business ventures of the family, look out for incoming investments, new investments. Really, they're, like the right-hand man, if you will, for the pillar, all things on the business aspect of the clan. And so that's the kind of the hierarchy. Now, underneath your horn on the military side, you have fists and then fingers. Your fists are kind of like your generals, and your fingers would be like your soldiers. And that's what the clans are comprised of. Now, these are also called green bones, guys. So the clan, No Peak, as well as the mountain clan, they're all what's considered green bones. Now, green bones are people born on Kikon who have the lineage and the bloodline, to be able to wear jade. Now, on the island of Kikon, that is the only place where jade exists in the world. And so because the world knows about it, it's not just exposed on Kikon. There's other places in the world that may have it, or they just know about it. It's a notable area for other countries to try and trade, because they, of course, want jade because it brings them power. It enforces, it would give their military, a stronger presence and be more of an enforcer if they had that. It'd be like giving their military supernatural abilities, essentially. But outside of that, that's really the only fantasy or magic element in the book, and that's something that I really liked about it, because it feels to me more relatable. And so I dig, modern or urban fantasy rather. And so if you're interested in fantasy at all, of course I would pick this up, but urban fantasy, phenomenal book. Again, I just started, I'm about halfway through Jade War right now, and I'll do a video on that in probably the next week or so. And I also just picked up the Illumicrate editions of the entire Greenbone Saga. And so those are beautiful. I'll make sure I put those in the next video. They're naked hardcovers, and they're all signed by Fonda Lee. Just really cool to find an author that's kind of just now getting springboarded into popularity, if you will. She has a few other books I don't have much interest in reading because I'm not a YA guy, but I've been so impressed with the series so far. I might give it a shot just because I really dig her writing style. But again, kind of your themes to look out for with this series and this book, the Greenbone Saga, Jade City, is going to be, of course, fantasy, magic, mafia warfare, and clan warfare. That's really what it all comes down to. So if those are things that interest you, I think that you'd love this book. It's really, and again, I'm just spewing out stuff that's already on the internet, but it's kind of a mashup of a Godfather type of story with magic involved in an Asian cultured setting. So I just actually watched the movie on Disney Plus the other day, Shang-Chi, And it was so funny. I watched that movie right after I read this book, and it reminded me a lot of it. So if you're into that sort of thing, I think you'd really like this book. It's about, I think it's 500 pages, Jade City, but again, it read so quick just because the chapters are relatively short, and it's action-packed the entire way. Even the scenes that are not violent are action-packed because of the drama that's happening between the families, and you just know something is stirring up and boiling. So it ends with an absolute bang, in my opinion. I loved the ending. I loved everything that led up to it. And so yeah, guys, that's really it for my Jade City review. Comment below if you guys have read it, or if you have any other recommendations for me that are similar to this, urban fantasy. I'm really interested to kind of start browsing in that genre and see if there's quite a few others that I like because of how much I enjoyed this particular title. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you thought about the book. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, without spoiling anything, what you thought about Jade War and just, you know, the trilogy as a whole. So like I said, guys, just starting this channel to kind of ramp it up, and really doing all this just for fun. I've got a day job, guys. This is in no way, shape, or form to become like a huge YouTuber, but what I found is, you know, constant readers it's a niche community, and I'm in it, and I love talking to other people about this stuff. It's just enjoyable for me because it's not all of my neighbors. It's not all of my peers. It's a niche kind of hobby that, you know, I'm interested in, my wife's interested in, and so it's always fun to just chop it up with other people that have a similar interest. So that's it for today, guys. Like I said, like, subscribe if you'd like to. I know I don't have a ton of content on there yet, but I'm planning on doing at least a video a week and just kind of getting a little bit more connected in the community. So in any case, again, my name's Nick. That's Jade City for today. Look out for Jade War on its way. And hopefully you guys have a great start to the new year. Thanks.